My name is Evelyn, and for 70 years, my life was a quiet, unassuming story written in the margins of other people's books. As a retired teacher, my greatest joys were found in the small, cultivated corners of the world. The well-tended roses in my garden, the comforting weight of a classic novel in my hands, and the love I poured into my niece, Sarah. I never had children of my own, so when my sister and her husband were taken in a cruel, sudden car crash, leaving their 10-year-old daughter orphaned, there was no question of what I would do. Sarah became my world. My small teacher's salary stretched to accommodate another life, my quiet home filled with the boisterous energy of a child, and my heart, which I had thought was destined for a solitary life, expanded to a capacity I never knew it had. I raised her as my own. Every scraped knee, every school play, every teenage heartbreak was ours to share. She was the daughter of my heart, if not my body, and I saw her as my life's great, unexpected masterpiece. The bond we shared was, I believed, unbreakable. I funneled my modest retirement savings into her future. I paid for every penny of her college education, watching with immense pride as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, the first in our family to do so. After she graduated, I sat her down in my small, sunlit living room and gave her a check. It was for $50,000, a significant portion of my nest egg. "This is to help you start your life, my love," I told her, my voice thick with emotion. "A foundation to build your dreams on." She had wept, her arms wrapped around my neck, and told me I was the most generous person in the world, that she would make me proud, that she would never, ever forget what I had done for her. And for a time, she was true to her word. She found a good job in marketing, and our relationship remained the central pillar of my life. She was my confidant, my dinner companion, my family. Then she met Liam. Liam was from a different world, a world of country clubs, trust funds, and summer homes. His family were local titans of industry, their name etched onto the sides of hospital wings and university libraries. They were, in a word, wealthy, with a quiet, generational power that was utterly foreign to our own humble existence. I was happy for Sarah, truly I was. She seemed deeply in love, and Liam was a perfect gentleman, charming and attentive whenever he visited my small, shabby home. But from the moment she accepted his engagement ring, a diamond the size of a robin's egg, I felt a subtle, tectonic shift in the landscape of our relationship. The daughter I knew began to disappear, replaced by a stranger I didn't recognize. The changes were small at first, like tiny cracks in a precious vase. Sarah's weekly dinners at my house became fortnightly, then monthly, and then were replaced entirely by brief, distracted phone calls. When she did visit, her eyes would scan my cozy, cluttered living room with a new, critical gaze. The home she had once called her sanctuary was now a bit dated. The antique furniture I had inherited from my mother was shabby chic, but more shabby than chic. She began to speak a new language, a dialect of brand names and exclusive vacation spots. She was being absorbed into Liam's world, and in the process, she was editing her own history, embarrassed by the humble beginnings I had so lovingly provided for her. The deepest cut was the wedding planning. I had dreamed for years of helping her choose a dress, of tasting cakes, of addressing invitations by her side. But I was systematically and cruelly excluded. The planning was being handled by Liam's mother, a formidable woman with a will of iron and a Rolodex of the city's most expensive vendors. When I gently asked Sarah if I could help, she gave me a pitying smile. "Oh, Aunt Evelyn," she said, her voice laced with a condescension that broke my heart. "It's a very high-end affair. You wouldn't be comfortable with these things. It's all handled." I was not a participant in the creation of her new life. I was a spectator, a relic from a past she was increasingly eager to shed. The final, catastrophic rupture came on a Tuesday morning. I had written a check to the local historical society, a small annual donation I made every year. A few days later, I received a polite but firm letter in the mail. The check had bounced. Impossible, I thought. I knew my finances to the penny. A cold, sickening dread washed over me as I called the bank. The young man on the phone was patient as he pulled up my account information. There was a long pause. "Ma'am," he said, his voice hesitant, "are you aware of a series of large online transfers made from your savings account over the past 3 months?" My blood ran cold. "No," I whispered. "I haven't made any large transfers." "Well," he continued, "I'm seeing 5 transfers, each for $20,000, made to an external account." He read the account number, a meaningless string of digits. He read the name on the receiving account. It was Sarah. $100,000. My entire remaining life savings, the money I had carefully set aside for my own old age, for my own security, was gone. The world tilted, the room spinning around me. I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. It couldn't be a mistake. The numbers were too precise, the timing too deliberate. It was a systematic, cold-blooded theft. And the thief was the one person on earth I loved more than life itself. I drove to Sarah's apartment in a daze, the city streets a blur of color and light. Her building was new and luxurious, with a doorman who looked at my modest 10-year-old car with disdain. She lived in a sleek, minimalist apartment that looked more like a magazine spread than a home. It was filled with art and furniture that I knew, with a sickening certainty, had been purchased with my money. She opened the door, surprised to see me. She was dressed in an elegant silk robe, a picture of leisurely affluence. "Aunt Evelyn," she said, her voice cool. "What a surprise." I didn't waste time on pleasantries. I walked past her into the apartment and laid the printed-out bank statements on her marble kitchen island. "I think you have something that belongs to me, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it steady. She glanced at the papers, her expression unreadable. There was no shock, no denial, no flicker of shame. She simply looked at me, her eyes as cold and hard as the diamond on her finger. "I was wondering when you'd notice," she said calmly. The casual cruelty of her words stole the air from my lungs. "You admit it," I whispered. "You stole my life savings?" "Stole is such an ugly word," she replied, turning to pour herself a glass of water. "I needed it. The wedding, this apartment, Liam's family expects a certain standard. I couldn't show up with nothing." "You had $50,000. I cried, my voice finally cracking. "The nest egg I gave you? 50,000 is nothing in their world," she scoffed. "Barely enough for the floral arrangements. Besides," she said, finally turning to face me, her face a mask of cold, hard entitlement, "you owed it to me, for my difficult childhood, for not having the things other kids had. Consider us even." And that was it. No remorse, no apology, just the cold, transactional logic of a stranger. The loving, grateful girl I had raised was gone. In her place stood a monster of my own creation, a creature of pure, unadulterated greed. I left her apartment and drove home, my mind a maelstrom of grief and rage. The financial loss was devastating, but it was nothing compared to the emotional annihilation. The child I had nurtured had turned on me, had devoured my love and my security without a second thought. My first instinct was to call the police, to hire a lawyer, to see her punished by the law. But as I sat in the profound silence of my home, surrounded by 30 years of shared memories, I knew that a legal battle would not be enough. It would be a slow, ugly process that would drag our family's tragedy through the mud. It would give her the chance to play the victim, to twist the narrative, to paint me as a vindictive old woman. No, the punishment had to fit the crime. She had betrayed me for the sake of status, for a place in a wealthy, influential world. So that was the world where I would unmask her. The punishment would not be a jail cell, but a social one. The verdict would be delivered not by a judge, but by the very people she was so desperate to impress. My justice would be swift, public, and absolute. A few days later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. It was the invitation to Sarah and Liam's engagement party. It was to be held at the Oakwood Country Club, the most exclusive and expensive venue in the city. The guest list, I knew, would be a who's who of the city's elite, including Liam's entire influential clan. I looked at the elegant script, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. Sarah had just handed me the stage for my final act. On the night of the party, I chose my outfit with care. I didn't try to compete with the couture gowns and glittering jewels I knew would be on display. I chose a simple, elegant navy blue dress, the one I had worn to my own retirement dinner. I wore my mother's pearl necklace. I wanted to look like what I was, a retired schoolteacher, a woman of modest means but immense dignity. I arrived at the country club, a quiet island of unassuming grace in a sea of ostentatious wealth. The ballroom was breathtaking, dripping with chandeliers and overflowing with cascades of white orchids. Sarah was radiant, a queen in her new kingdom, holding court with Liam by her side. She saw me arrive, and a flicker of annoyance crossed her face before she masked it with a brilliant, false smile. "Aunt Evelyn," she said, kissin'. Gee the air beside my cheek. "I'm so glad you could make it." "I wouldn't miss it for the world, my dear," I replied, my voice gentle. I spent the first hour observing, a quiet anthropologist studying a foreign tribe. I was introduced to Liam's parents, the formidable Mr. and Mrs. Davenport. They were polite, but their eyes appraised me with a cool, dispassionate curiosity, taking in my simple dress, my sensible shoes. I was a curiosity to them, the humble root from which their son's beautiful, exotic flower had sprung. I smiled, I made small talk, and I waited. I was the ghost at the feast, and I was about to begin the haunting. The time for toasts arrived. Liam's father, a man whose voice commanded boardrooms, gave a booming speech about family, legacy, and the merging of two great dynasties, conveniently ignoring the fact that one of those dynasties consisted of a single retired schoolteacher. Liam gave a heartfelt, loving toast to his beautiful fiancé, his words painting a picture of a woman I did not know, a woman of grace and integrity. He was as much a victim in this as I was, he just didn't know it yet. Then the MC, a man with a practiced, cheerful voice, stepped to the microphone. And now, would anyone else from the bride's side like to say a few words? All eyes turned to me, the sole representative of Sarah's family. Sarah herself shot me a look, a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, a silent warning. I ignored it. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady, and walked to the microphone. A hush fell over the room. "Good evening," I began, my voice clear and calm, honed by 40 years of commanding a classroom of rowdy children. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Evelyn, Sarah's aunt, but for most of her life, I have had the profound honor of being her mother." A murmur of appreciation went through the crowd. I smiled warmly at Sarah, a loving maternal smile that did not reach my cold, furious eyes. I remember the day I brought her home, a little girl lost and afraid, and I promised her I would always take care of her, that I would give her everything I had to give. I paused, letting the emotion of the moment build. And I have tried to keep that promise. I was so proud to send her to college, and when she graduated, I gave her a small gift, a nest egg of $50,000 to help her start her life. I saw Liam's parents nod, impressed by the gesture. Sarah was beginning to look deeply uncomfortable. My story was straying from the approved script. Now it was time for the final act. I reached into my small handbag and pulled out a neatly folded stack of papers, the bank statements. But as this wonderful engagement approached, I continued, my voice taking on a new, almost reverent tone. I felt that her first gift wasn't enough to launch her into the bright new future she so clearly deserves. So I decided to give her a second, much more significant engagement gift. A secret gift from me to her. I saw Sarah's eyes widen in horror. She knew what was coming. "Over the past 3 months," I said, my voice resonating with a feigned, tearful generosity, "I have secretly given her the entirety of my life savings, $100,000. A collective gasp went through the room. I held up the bank statements, unfolding them so the bold, damning numbers of the transfers were visible. "Some might say it was a foolish gift for a woman on a fixed income," I said, my gaze sweeping over the shocked faces of the Davenports. "But you cannot put a price on a child's happiness. I have given my Sarah everything I have in this world." I turned and looked directly at my niece, her face a pale, frozen mask of terror. I smiled my sweetest, most loving smile and delivered the final, devastating line. "And darling," I said, my voice dripping with a poisonous sincerity, "I just hope my gift is enough to buy the happiness you clearly feel you deserve." The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and more damning than any accusation. In that moment, everyone in the room understood. They saw the printed-out bank statements, they saw my simple dress and my dignified, tear-filled eyes, and they saw Sarah, decked in diamonds, her face a portrait of guilt. I had not accused her of a single thing. I had simply told the truth, wrapped in the language of love, and it had been enough to utterly destroy her. I placed the microphone back on its stand and walked back to my table, my head held high. No one spoke. No one moved. The festive atmosphere of the party had evaporated, replaced by a thick, suffocating blanket of shame. I picked up my handbag, gave a polite, final nod to the stunned, silent Davenports, and walked out of the ballroom. I did not need to stay to see the fallout. The story of what happened next trickled back to me through the city's gossip mill. The party ended abruptly just moments after I left. The Davenport family, for whom reputation and integrity were everything, Ray appalled and humiliated. Liam, heartbroken and disgusted, confronted Sarah, who, under the weight of the evidence, finally confessed. The engagement was called off within the week. The lavish wedding was canceled, the deposits forfeited. Sarah was left with nothing. The money she had stolen was likely already spent, and the wealthy life she had betrayed me for had vanished like a mirage. She was a social pariah, her name forever associated with theft and elder abuse, a story that would be whispered at every country club and charity gala for years to come. I never saw her again. The money is gone, and so is the child I raised. My victory did not bring me joy. It brought me a quiet, desolate peace. I sit now in my shabby, comfortable house, the silence a constant companion. My revenge was not in the reclaiming of my money, but in the reclaiming of my truth. I am a woman who gave everything for a child she loved. And when that child tried to erase me, I simply reminded the world, and her, that my story was worth more than she could ever afford to pay.